When we're looking at future-proofing settlement work, I like to think about it as a bit of an iceberg. There's a great deal below the surface that has to be in place before what we see above the surface is effective. The future of settlement work is about much more than technology, but I want to focus this iceberg conversation on technology since that's what we're focused on here. And as you'll see, what's below the surface isn't just about building digital competencies, but is much broader than that. Let's start with framing the issue, the future of settlement work. A broad framing of the issue helps to identify the surprises that might disrupt the system. The way we frame the problem may change as we learn more about the multiple pathways through which drivers could impact the system, but we start with a broad idea of the challenge or goal. In the future of your job, the frontline worker's job comes up a lot in this conversation, mainly as a point of anxiety, a fear of being replaced by technology. And I don't think your job is at risk. It is evolving, but you are more important than ever before. And as we look to the future, we can and should drive the change that is happening and ensure it aligns with our sector's core values as well as the type of work we want to be doing. We've been talking about frontline competencies as a sector for many years. In 2019, some folks did some research and looked at the big picture competencies of settlement practitioners. The report found that the work of settlement counselors goes beyond just providing direct services to newcomers to include building capacity in communities that welcome newcomers. The role of settlement counselors has two fundamental parts, each based on capacity building: to empower newcomers and empowering existing communities. The 8 critical competencies that we see on the screen help settlement counselors be successful, and they include the ability to discern the strengths and identify the needs of newcomers, assist newcomers to navigate social and economic systems, and help newcomers gain understanding of Canadian society and culture, and nurture a sense of belonging. When we look at empowering existing communities, settlement practitioners contribute to building environments of unity and diversity, so thinking about welcoming and inclusive communities, as well as advocating for the well-being of newcomers. At the core, settlement practitioners are fostering initiative, upholding integrity, and promoting learning. As we'll see as we move through the iceberg, these skills also need to be considered within a digital literacy and competency framework. Tamarack's community change model shows us that community innovation is just one part of the puzzle. It's about systems thinking, new forms of leadership, engaging our communities or clients in our systems change, identifying and amplifying what works, and building on it to create new approaches. The community change or community development model is really part of the foundation of our sector's work. We don't just provide transactional services for newcomers, but work to create inclusion, welcome communities, and advocate for these things in all aspects of our work, whether in employment, health, housing, or education, for example. And part of that is how we frame innovation. You see here in this model, it's framed as community innovation. How can we create, test, and scale new approaches? And that's an important distinction and definition for me. While I'm not an expert on innovation, I want to spend a few minutes talking about innovation because it's what I'm focused on when we look at the future of settlement. And I want you to hear where I ground myself in definitions and the idea of innovation. These days we hear a lot about disruptive innovation, but I don't think disruptive innovation is our way. Instead, let's think about something people have termed constructive innovation. And I want to read you this definition that makes a distinction between disruptive and constructive innovation. So, disruption is an inevitable outcome of innovation, and we need innovation to adhere to changing markets and consumer needs. However, once disruptive innovation becomes the core goal of platforms, industries, and organizations, it tends to ignore and dismantle existing ecosystems with minimal regard to the outcome. Basically, it becomes an innovation tantrum masquerading as a process, harming the most vulnerable individuals and societies. Disruption works when you have something to break. With all the broken industries and lives, perhaps it is time to embrace a constructive innovation attitude. Let's talk more about organic growth, ways to evolve industries and platforms in a more realistic way. It's time to solve hard problems that benefits and is created by the many and not the few. A future where investors and creators use the term return on investment beyond monetary value, but with a societal ROI. So based on that, can we help make systems in need better rather than dismantle them further or profit from failure? Move fast and break things is not always a solution for hard problems. That is not to say we should not be experimental. It's great in a small, controlled environment, but is not always the best way to handle complex systems and ecosystems. Experts are people that have experience in a specific field. Learn and listen to them first. Put a bit more effort in helping and supporting existing systems and knowledge hubs. Perhaps they are broken, but sometimes fixing is better than dismantling them altogether. So based on that idea, ultimately our innovation is what Tamarack calls community innovation, where innovation is not just a destination, but a process, but not a linear process. It requires us to have the space, time, and resources to learn, build capacity, evaluate, change, test, etc. And community innovation, by its nature, is inclusive, collaborative, and builds on our resources and assets. It doesn't reject or dismiss us as not good enough, which disruptive innovation tends to. So the spiral of power, we're ultimately talking about community innovation and community power. Perhaps you've heard the line, nothing for us without us. We start with the people we serve. Innovation can't happen without the people it impacts. The spiral of power reminds us of this and ensures an approach that makes us innovate within an anti-oppression framework. Whenever we work towards creating accessible, flexible, and more choices for newcomers to access the services that they need, newcomers must be at the center of our solutions, our innovations, and iterations. And this isn't new. When I started in the sector almost 30 years ago, this is what I was taught from a popular education perspective of how to start creating anything new. Start with newcomers and communities. This spiral model of popular education and participatory community engagement. Everything we did centered on the newcomer, or it simply wasn't done. So as you can see here, we start with the experience and knowledge of the participants, we identify patterns, and we build from there. Ultimately, we make sure that we are iterating and changing as we go from what we're learning. And through it all, as you see in the middle, we are challenging power relations, we're challenging the issues of equity and inclusion, disconnect, and divides in our society. Today, innovation has been commodified and professionalized. We hear it called user experience, human-centered labs, service design, social innovation, social research and development, etc. Language that tends to be used to exclude and create power structures where you're not innovative if you don't use the right lingo. When really we're talking about the same things, centering newcomers or users in our work. When we get past the lingo, we discover that we might actually be talking about addressing social justice, using popular education and community engagement techniques to address power, inequity, and oppression. And so we can use these models and work with them, but we need to use them in our own context that we work within. So, NetHope, an organization that supports international humanitarian organizations in their digital transformation, has created a model for the digital nonprofit that looks at 6 core areas: people, processes, technology, data, investment, and readiness. If we look at their categories in our context, some specifics emerge where we are and should be focusing. This is my sort of half-baked version of their model applied to our sector. We can start to see what our priorities might be. So at the core, at the center, is newcomer-centric data, creating a seamless newcomer settlement experience journey. I'd called this client in a previous version, but in a conversation realized how limiting that is for our thinking. We need to be centering newcomers, whether they access our services or not, in our plans. When we think about people, we're talking about professional development in our context. Building a competencies framework for our work, including knowledge mobilization and transfer. When we're looking at process, we're talking about digital and data maturity and risk frameworks. Frameworks we can not only build on, but learn from, borrow, customize, and implement in our sector. Technology in our case needs to be tempered with digital inclusion and equity. This needs to align with our sector values of access, anti-oppression, and inclusion. When we're thinking about readiness, this is where we're talking about those baselines in hybrid service delivery where we have a common minimum standard or floor of infrastructure and competencies that no agency and no individual should fall below. We can certainly exceed those baselines, and we should strive to, but at their core, we all should have access to build those baselines. When it comes to investment, I like to use what Alan Broadbent from the Maitrey Foundation called the 3 I's of immigrant integration: intentionality, instruments, and investments. We need to be strategic. We need to be intentional about what we're doing. We need to have the right instruments, tactics, or technologies in order to address what we're being intentional about, and we need investments in those instruments and in that strategy in order to make it happen. Data is key to all of that. In this model, I'm putting it at the center, labeled as newcomer. It's really about being newcomer-centric, fully understanding newcomers and communities in order to create that seamless newcomer settlement journey. Understanding newcomers makes the technology and service intervention decisions that much easier. And moving on, we want to look at digital skills. Again, NetHope's digital skills framework is an organized way to guide you with what to know, learn, and do in order to better communicate, collaborate, solve complex problems, advocate, and create new ways of doing good in a world where digital is abundant. The Digital Skills Framework is based on research into technology trends, existing frameworks, and digital skills needed for success, both now and in the future. Historically, skills frameworks that have been based around 5 common themes: information and digital literacy, communication and collaboration, problem solving, safety, creativity, and innovation. These existing frameworks have helped guide skills training and have been used in businesses and education for more than a decade. But newer technology and trends, such as advancements in cloud technology, blockchain, AI, and machine learning, as well as the Internet of Things, need to be incorporated into the frameworks to fully identify the skills needed for workers and organizations to be successful now and in the future. So let's walk through each one of these. Information and digital literacy was helpful in the first 20 years of computer technology, especially as technology became ubiquitous. But we need to have a deeper understanding of technology, a proficiency in skill base and data use, and the ability to follow technology trends and apply those trends in an organization. So these skills lead to a new technical literacy, which really forms the foundation for all the other skills in the framework. Communication and collaboration is still an important part of the framework. However, now people within an organization need to participate in digital teams, share projects, tasks, calendars, tools, and multimedia. They need to work effectively across cultural, social, and language barriers while learning to share openly across networks when appropriate. So this changes that original skill to one NetHope calls highly adaptive collaboration. Problem solving is the backbone of all your work. Technology allows individuals to use data in figuring out answers to complex problems. It also means problems get more complicated with the increase in information. Workers will need to solve increasingly complex problems using research, analytics, measurement, rapid prototyping, and feedback. You'll have to pivot around environmental changes, and organizations will need to continually build an environment to achieve the best solution. So for NetHope, this skill evolves into one of complex problem solving. Safety was originally geared towards keeping your private information safe, so online privacy, while ensuring the safety of other people's personal information. With the proliferation of sites, both social sites and shared sites, such as shared platforms and networking tools, as well as project management and collaboration platforms, it's critical that workers understand their own digital footprint. In the nonprofit sector, we work with vulnerable populations, and that means safety and security of these people, of newcomers, is a moral imperative in our work. We need to be able to identify secure sites, as well as the benefits and risks of giving information across devices and through different sites, channels, and apps, through software, etc. Developing a positive online identity, building a digital reputation while being safe leads to a skill that NetHope is now calling digital responsibility. So we need to be responsible in our use of technology. Creativity and innovation remains a skill, but grows to include the ability to generate new ideas or revise original ones with different thinking, or by drawing connections through categorization, prioritization, or other segmentation of information. This skill uses the information available through technology and data to make better formed decisions and allows people from different places to participate in the creative process. In a remote and a digital space, there are no geographic boundaries to participation. Organizations can take risks on new ideas to generate impact. So creativity and innovation remains a pillar within this NetHope framework. The entrepreneurial spirit is an important part of a digital skill set. It means failing and learning and a feeling of ownership in the work that you're doing. Employees or workers look at old problems or processes through new eyes, through new lenses. You challenge old ways of working, and you're open, co-creating with newcomers with a focus on their needs in an agile way of working through an organization. When we look within our sector, eSkills, the eSkills project, a digital literacy project for newcomers, provides a deeper dive into the areas of technical literacy and digital responsibility, which are really core to what we're talking about in this course. While created for newcomers, this model is useful for us as workers' tool. Their model is consistent with broader views of digital literacy that encompass the ideas of digital fluency, digital citizenship, and digital equity. For example, digital literacy can be considered an understanding of how to use the tools. Digital fluency is the ability to create something new with those tools. In our context, for example, in learning a foreign language, a literate person can read, speak, and listen for understanding in the new language. A fluent person can create something in the language, a story, a poem, a play, or a conversation. Digital literacy has been described by UNESCO as the ability to define, access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, evaluate, and create information safely and appropriately through digital technologies for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship. It includes competencies that are variously referred to as computer literacy, ICT, or Information and Communication Technology Literacy, Information Literacy, and Media Literacy. It entails the ability to identify and use technology confidently, creatively, and critically to meet the demands and challenges of living, learning, and working in a digital society. You can see those elements here in the eSkills model. It's aspirational, but achievable, and something all our organizations should be striving for. Now, when we emerge above the surface, we start to see the visible uses of technology in our sector. I've organized these into 3 areas: sector-focused, newcomer-focused, and community-focused. Sector-focused means looking at how we collaborate, share knowledge, and are active in our communities of practice. Information sharing, collaboration, knowledge mobilization, professional development all take time. Everyone needs a focused approach to innovation. It takes time, but we can do better as a sector to share what's working, what we're learning, how we're using technology, and how we're planning for the future. Being newcomer-focused means being newcomer-centric in our work. We tend to focus on what works for us and what our funding guidelines are. The immigration journey, information, and system navigation is overwhelming for newcomers. We know this. Newcomers may not know what they don't know. We know earlier interventions can make a difference in someone's successful settlement and integration. It's why pre-arrival services exist, right? Even when offered beneficial services or programs, people often don't take advantage of them. Clients don't hear about the services or don't think they need them. We know this is a challenge both with pre-arrival and in-Canada services. If we don't reach people with timely information, there are missed opportunities, potentially longer timelines for settlement, and there's frustration and misinformation. What we need to start talking about is how our entire service system puts newcomers in the center and builds from there, not just at the individual organizational service level, but at a systems level. Collaborating together to put newcomers at the center of our services and efforts is essential to create better service experiences and therefore better settlement and inclusion experiences for newcomers. Community focus takes us back to that Tamarack model of community change. In all 3, you'll see a common line: seek, sense, and share. This comes from Harold Jarkey, a Canadian consultant who works with individuals, organizations, and governments to improve collaboration, knowledge sharing, and sense-making. And I want to spend a few minutes on that. Seeking is finding things out and keeping up to date. Building a network of colleagues is helpful in this regard, or community of practice. It not only allows us to pull information, but also have it pushed to us by trusted sources. Good curators are valued members of knowledge networks, and we benefit for seeking information with each other. Sensing is how we personalize information and use it. Sensing includes reflecting and putting into practice what we have learned. It often requires experimentation, as we learn best by doing. In our case, this is also sense-making for newcomers, helping them navigate systems around them, be they community systems or digital systems. Sharing includes exchanging resources, ideas, and experiences with our networks, as well as collaborating with our colleagues. It also means how we share information with newcomers to help them on their settlement journey. Ircc's future vision sits a bit above and below the surface because we know a bit about it and we hear about it in some settings, but it is not completely transparent or known to everyone in the sector. In particular, we don't know all the details, but we know that Ircc is on board when it comes to a future vision of the sector providing hybrid or blended service delivery. For once, their vision aligns with the research, sector experience, and recommendations made to them, and that feels like progress. As you see here, Ircc has a vision for clients, service provider organizations, or SPOs, and themselves. Clients are able to access high-quality settlement services online and can opt to complement these with in-person offerings. So that's that hybrid or blended service delivery model. Service providers continue their digital transformation while providing tailored in-person services to clients who need additional support. Again, the hybrid or blended model. Ircc's settlement program provides a suite of digital settlement services that improve client outcomes and program effectiveness. And we're hoping that this includes the language sector and other Ircc programs as well. It's important for consistency across the sector. And you see at the bottom, over the next 2 years, they have committed to continuing to build an evidence base of what works and have identified specific areas where the sector is looking for guidance: cybersecurity, privacy, digital literacy, and the need to build digital guidelines and standards, which will be part of the next call for proposals in 2024. A National Steering Committee on Technology is being created that will guide the sector and collaborate with Ircc to make this vision practical and fundable. The next big CFP, or call for proposals, is in 2 years. We'll know then what direction the Digital Settlement Agency is heading in and who will lead the sector. As we ponder all of this, the question for us, in this course in particular, is what do you need to feel competent and comfortable to provide digital and remote hybrid services to newcomers?